The metal clang of the dumpster lid echoed across the alley like a gunshot, but no one turned to look. It was a Friday afternoon in the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, and the streets shimmered with the oppressive heat of late summer. Behind a crumbling strip mall, a battered sedan rolled away quickly, leaving behind a mystery no one knew existed, except for the thing inside the trash. Among the piles of discarded takeout boxes, broken crates, and moldy furniture, a black plastic tub lay sideways, its lid barely attached. Inside, a coiled, silent figure shifted. It was a red-tailed boa constrictor, barely alive. The snake's scales, once glossy with healthy iridescence, were dulled and flaking. She had no water, no heat source, no food. Just a thin layer of dry newspaper lining the bottom of the plastic tub, wrinkled from weeks of neglect. Her breathing was shallow, tongue flicking only occasionally. Her name, if she had ever been given one, had long since been forgotten. At the edge of the alley, the sound of a bicycle's rubber tires breaking against gravel caught no attention, except hers. Her tired body didn't move, but her instincts still reacted. She tasted the air. Something was different. The cyclist was a man in his mid-30s with a worn backpack slung over one shoulder and sunglasses streaked with dust. He locked his bike by the back entrance to the strip mall, the sign above the door reading, Southwest Wildlife Rescue, temporarily closed. His name was Dr. Noah Reynolds, a field biologist with a specialty in reptiles and amphibians, and someone whose life had lately felt as discarded as the snake in the dumpster. Noah had returned from Guatemala 2 months ago after working on a rainforest preservation project. A funding cut had left him temporarily unemployed, with no lab, no research, and a growing sense of failure. He now volunteered part-time with animal rescues while figuring out what came next. His routine included checking the dumpster behind the rescue center for abandoned animals, which, sadly, was not unheard of. He didn't expect to find anything today, but when he lifted the heavy lid, the wave of warm, pungent air made him gag. He poked around with a stick, moving aside cardboard and junk, until he saw it. The tipped plastic tub, the strange shape coiled inside. His heart dropped. No way. Carefully, he reached in and touched the edge of the tub. The moment his hand moved the lid, the snake shifted and hissed weakly. She was alive. Noah's movements became mechanical. Years of experience took over as he crouched beside the tub, gently sliding his hands around her midsection. He hissed through his teeth when he felt how emaciated she was. Her ribs were too visible. Her skin had retained old shed in patches, a sign of dehydration and stress. But she was alert. Barely. No chip collar, no ID. Someone really just dumped you, he muttered. Noah's mind spun. This wasn't a wild snake. She was a tropical species, non-native, illegal to release, and utterly dependent on proper care. Releasing her into the Arizona desert would have been a death sentence. Leaving her here was only slightly better. He gently placed her into a canvas reptile bag he carried for emergencies and zipped his backpack closed. She was quiet, exhausted. He needed to act fast. The rescue center was still closed to the public due to renovations, but Noah had keys. Inside, he moved quickly, filling a shallow plastic enclosure with water, regulating heat pads, and adjusting humidity. He laid her carefully inside, watching her breathe, the slow rise and fall of her scaled body. "I'm calling you Ivy," he said softly. The name came from nowhere, but it stuck. The rescue center smelled of old plywood and reptile bedding, an odd but familiar combination that brought a strange comfort to Noah Reynolds. Ivy, now coiled in the recovery enclosure under a faint red heat lamp, remained still. Her dull brown and tan scales lacked their natural shimmer, her breathing shallow but steady. Noah hadn't seen a case this bad in years. She wasn't just dehydrated. The muscle loss around her jaw and spine suggested she had gone without proper nutrition for months. Her tail had a small wound near the tip, possibly from rubbing against something sharp while trying to escape her plastic prison. There were signs of scale rot, early stages of mouth infection, and what looked like multiple stuck eye caps from previous failed sheds. Noah leaned over the table and whispered, "You've been through hell, girl." It wasn't anthropomorphizing, not entirely. Ivy was a living being, and Noah had long ago learned that reptiles, while often dismissed as emotionless or cold, reacted to care, to consistency, to calm voices. He'd seen tortoises extend their necks for scratches, lizards that leaned into touch, and snakes that followed his movements with quiet curiosity. He gave Ivy a subcutaneous fluid injection and soaked her in a lukewarm bath for nearly an hour. She didn't fight it. That worried him more than if she had. While she soaked, he prepped a makeshift quarantine room in the back of the building, away from other reptiles. He hadn't been authorized to take in new animals while the center was technically closed, but he had a reputation in the small Phoenix herpetology circle, and a silent agreement with his supervisor. If it breathes and needs help, you help it. That night, Noah slept on a cot in the corner, a clipboard full of notes on Ivy at his side. Every hour he checked on her. She remained quiet, unmoving, but not worsening. That was something. By morning, Ivy had shifted positions slightly, curled tighter, a reflexive instinct to conserve body heat and protect herself. Noah noted it with cautious optimism. He offered her a thawed rat pup, not expecting much. To his surprise, she flicked her tongue, slowly extended her neck, and with painful sluggishness, began to eat. It was a clumsy, weak attempt, but it brought a lump to Noah's throat. "Atta girl," he said, crouching beside her enclosure. "Still got fight in you." He stayed with her for another hour, watching her breathe, watching her rest. Over the next several days, Ivy's condition improved. She began moving more. Her eyes cleared up slightly. She accepted food more eagerly. Noah kept precise records: temperature, weight, hydration, stool, skin condition, anything that could indicate her trajectory. The process was slow, healing always was, but the progress, though fragile, was undeniable. The bigger challenge was what came next. Noah was aware of the legal nightmare surrounding abandoned exotic pets. Arizona had strict rules. Ivy's species wasn't banned outright, but ownership required permits, and evidence of purchase, veterinary records, housing compliance. She had none of that. Whoever dumped her had erased all trace. Maybe they'd bought her online, from an unregistered breeder. Maybe it was a social media impulse purchase. Cool snake, let's be edgy pet owners. Until the responsibility kicked in. That's how it always went. Noah sat at his laptop and began making calls. Rescue partners, reptile sanctuaries, educational centers. No one had space. Budgets were tight. Liability for exotic reptiles was a tough sell to donors and boards. "She's not aggressive," he argued to one director in Tucson. "She's got a calm disposition. Good for outreach, once she stabilizes." "Sorry, Noah, we just took in 2 tegus. No space for a boa right now." He hung up, frustrated. That night, he stayed late, sitting beside Ivy's enclosure, listening to the soft humming of the thermostats. His cot remained in the corner. He hadn't been home in days. His apartment felt emptier than the rescue center did. "I don't know what to do with you," he said quietly. "But I'm not giving up." She didn't respond, of course, but her head lifted slightly. She looked at him through the foggy glass. It was the first time he felt seen in weeks. 2 days later, a break came from an unlikely place. An email. Subject: Inquiry. Reptile Outreach Opportunities. It was from a woman named Claire Maddox, director of the Sonora Discovery Center, a privately funded nature education facility 2 hours south of Phoenix. She had heard about Noah's rescue work through a mutual colleague. They had recently expanded a program for local school visits and were seeking new animals suitable for classroom interaction, especially reptiles. "We believe in giving animals second chances," Claire wrote. "Do you have any candidates currently in recovery that might one day be suitable for youth education?" Noah stared at the screen, blinking. He called her immediately. They spoke for over an hour. Claire was passionate, articulate, and deeply respectful of the animals in her care. She didn't sugarcoat the challenges. "Some kids scream when they see a snake," she said with a laugh. "But the right snake, with the right energy, it can change how they see the world." Noah told her Ivy's story. Every heartbreaking detail. Claire didn't hesitate. "I want to meet her," she said. "Let's set up a visit." The next morning, Ivy rested on clean bedding, her colors slightly brighter under the lamp. Noah knelt beside her with a gentle smile. "Looks like someone wants to give you a job," he said softly. For the first time since rescuing her, Ivy uncoiled slightly and stretched. Not much, just enough to show her body was beginning to trust again. And Noah, watching her, realized something he hadn't expected. So was he. The morning sun poured through the rescue center's dusty windows, making golden rays dance across the clean enclosure where Ivy lay coiled in a lazy spiral. Her skin still carried the signs of neglect, but her posture had changed. Less defensive, more curious. Noah noticed it the second he walked in, clutching a half-drunk thermos of coffee and a clipboard covered in scribbled updates. "Morning, Ivy," he murmured, kneeling beside her. "Big day today. Let's try to impress the visitors, huh?" Claire Maddox was due to arrive within the hour. Noah had scrubbed the place top to bottom. Technically, the facility was still temporarily closed, But Claire had assured him it wasn't an inspection, more like a conversation. Still, Noah felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the one that came from caring too much and hoping even harder. At 10:05 a.m., a red Toyota SUV pulled into the lot. Out stepped a woman in her early 40s with short, copper-colored hair tucked beneath a wide-brimmed straw hat. She wore a khaki shirt with the Sonora Discovery Center's embroidered logo over the pocket, loose jeans, and worn hiking boots. A tablet and camera bag were slung over her shoulder. Noah stepped outside to greet her. "Claire?" he asked. She smiled and extended her hand. "And you must be Dr. Reynolds." "Just Noah these days," he said, shaking her hand. "Thanks for making the drive." Claire glanced around the old stucco building with a curious eye. "You weren't kidding when you said this place had character," he chuckled. "That's a polite way of saying old and dusty. Come on in." Inside, Claire's gaze scanned every corner with practiced efficiency, first assessing the environment, then the animals. She moved with the quiet presence of someone who had been around fragile things for a long time. "I read about you a few years back," she said as they walked toward the quarantine area. "You gave a TEDx talk about snake intelligence and emotional response. That was you, wasn't it?" Noah's ears turned slightly red. "Yeah, that was me. That feels like 100 years ago." "You spoke about a corn snake that would recognize your voice." "Her name was Moxie. She lived 15 years. Smartest snake I've ever known." Claire gave him a warm smile. "I always liked that story." Noah paused at the door to the back room. "Well, Ivy's not Moxie, but she deserves a chance." When he opened the door, Claire stepped in silently. Ivy lay under the heat lamp, only the faint flick of her tongue indicating she noticed new company. Noah kept his voice low. "She's a red-tailed boa, about 5 years old, give or take. Rough start. Someone dumped her in a dumpster behind the building in a plastic tub. No chip, no paperwork. Probably bought online or at a reptile expo without a clue what it means to care for her properly." Claire knelt slowly by the glass. "She's beautiful," she said quietly. "Wasn't when I found her," Noah added. "She was barely alive. We're talking scale rot, malnutrition, retained sheds, dehydration. She's had 3 vet visits. We're almost through the worst." Claire didn't move. "Has she ever struck?" "Not once. Not even when I gave injections. She's calm, curious. She'll make eye contact. I think she's got potential." After a long pause, Claire stood. "I agree." Noah blinked. "Really?" Claire nodded. "You know what makes a good education animal? Not just a species that kids will point at. It's temperament, patience, resilience. Ivy has it. I can feel it." He exhaled slowly. "So you'll take her?" Claire looked him over. "Not quite yet. I want you to bring her down to the center, spend a few days, let her get a feel for the place, and let you see it too. If she adjusts well, we'll set up a long-term arrangement. If she doesn't, we'll find another solution." Noah nodded. "Deal." Claire smiled again. "Besides, I wouldn't mind having a brain like yours on site for a few days. You've got away with reptiles. That's rare." He scratched the back of his neck. "Thanks. I've been needing something like this." That evening, Noah packed a soft enclosure for Ivy, a portable heating unit, clean bedding, water dishes, and all of her medical notes. She had grown accustomed to gentle handling, and now slithered into the padded carrier with little resistance. He spoke softly to her as he worked, his voice low and steady. "You're getting a trial run, girl. Field trip time." He pulled out his old field journal and slipped it into the front pocket of his backpack. He hadn't written in it in months. The pages had once been filled with observations from Guatemala, with sketches of tree frogs and python nests, with notes about biodiversity and balance. Now, he would start again, with Ivy. The next morning, they set off before sunrise. The desert stretched around them in dusty golds and pinks, the road flanked by saguaro cacti standing like sentinels. Ivy's carrier rested on the seat beside Noah, the heating unit humming faintly. He drove in silence, his mind buzzing. The Sonora Discovery Center sat on a private reserve nestled near the edge of a dry wash. The building was modern but eco-friendly. Wood paneling, solar arrays, native landscaping. There were outdoor enclosures for tortoises, educational classrooms, even a glass atrium with desert plants and snakes visible through the walls. Claire greeted them at the front gate. "I've got a spot set up," she said. "It's quiet, warm, away from foot traffic." They carried Ivy together into a specially prepped room with soft lights and natural heat. Noah opened the carrier and gently lifted her out. She moved with the slow grace of a recovering animal, tongue flicking as she took in the unfamiliar scents. Claire watched as Ivy explored the enclosure. She's alert. That's a good sign. She's smart, Noah said. She remembers more than people think. For the next few hours, they monitored Ivy's adjustment. She curled into the shelter, rested, then emerged again, slow but not panicked. Noah stayed nearby, whispering occasionally, offering reassurance through tone and presence. Later, Claire offered Noah a place in the guest cabin on site. "You should stay for a few nights," she said. "Observe her, meet the staff. There might be a future here, for both of you." Noah hesitated. "You mean me working here?" Claire smiled. "Maybe, if it's something you want." That night, as Noah sat beneath the stars outside the cabin, the desert silent except for the distant hoot of an owl, he thought about the question. What did he want? Guatemala had been purpose. The rescue center had been refuge. But this? This could be a beginning. The first morning at the Sonora Discovery Center was cooler than expected. A light desert breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of sagebrush and distant creosote. Noah stood at the enclosure window, watching as Ivy stirred beneath a rock-shaped hide in her temporary habitat. Her scales, though still dulled by old injuries, glinted faintly under the carefully calibrated heat lamps. She had eaten last night, another rat pup, and had begun exploring the corners of the new enclosure with slow, deliberate movements. It was progress, not just for her, but for Noah as well. He hadn't slept much, but not from stress. The simple quiet of the guest cabin, with its solar-powered lamps and wooden walls, had given him space to breathe. It was the first night in weeks that he hadn't fallen asleep in a sleeping bag beside a heating pad or been jolted awake to check on Ivy's vitals. Now, watching her adjust, he felt a cautious kind of pride. Claire arrived mid-morning, carrying a clipboard and 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to Noah and leaned on the enclosure's wooden rail. "She made it through the night just fine," she said with a glance inside. "That's a good start." "Better than I expected," Noah replied. "She doesn't stress easily. That's rare." Claire studied him for a moment. "You know, most people would have dropped her off and gone back to their lives." "I didn't really have one to go back to," he admitted. She didn't press further. Instead, she handed him the clipboard. "We've got 3 classes visiting today, one from a local middle school. I want you to observe, maybe jump in if you're comfortable. No pressure, just watch how we do things." He glanced at the schedule. Desert ecology, snakes of the Southwest, and reptile mythbusters. He smirked. "I like that last one." Claire chuckled. "You should have seen the reactions last month when we explained that snakes don't chase people. One girl swore a king snake hunted her through a playground." Classic. The first class arrived at 10. A yellow school bus rolled up to the main gate, and a wave of chatter and giggles erupted as 26th graders filed out, their teacher trailing behind looking exhausted already. The students were a typical mix, some excited, some nervous, a few already filming TikToks on their phones. Noah stood in the background of the open-air classroom, arms folded, watching as a young staff member named Janelle welcomed the kids. She was energetic and funny, weaving jokes into her explanations about desert food chains and ecosystem balance. She introduced the first animal, an Arizona king snake, and brought it out gently in her hands. Half the class gasped. One boy yelped. "It's okay," Janelle said calmly. "This little guy eats rattlesnakes for breakfast. Literally. King snakes are immune to rattlesnake venom." A few kids leaned closer. Noah couldn't help but smile. During the second session, Claire nudged him forward. "Want to say something?" He hesitated. Public speaking hadn't been on his agenda lately. But he stepped up, palms open. "Hi," he said to the class. "I'm Noah. I used to study snakes in the rainforests of Central America. Some of them could stretch across your classroom floor. But the biggest challenge I ever faced wasn't in a jungle. It was in a dumpster behind a building in Phoenix." That got their attention. He told Ivy's story, not with drama, but with honesty. How she was found in a plastic tub, nearly dead. How she had been dumped like trash because someone didn't want the responsibility. How she fought to stay alive. A girl in the front row raised her hand. "Is she here now?" He nodded. "She is, but she's still recovering. And part of her recovery is learning to trust again, just like people do sometimes." There was a long pause before the same girl whispered, "Can we see her?" Noah glanced at Claire. She gave a small nod. Back in the quarantine area, Noah carefully lifted Ivy from her enclosure. She was slow, but relaxed in his hands, her body draped over his arm and shoulder. Her tongue flicked the air rhythmically. She was reading the world. When the students saw her, a few instinctively stepped back. But one brave boy stepped forward and asked, "Can I touch her?" "With 2 fingers," Noah said, lowering Ivy slightly. "On her back, gently." The boy did. Ivy remained calm. Then a girl joined, then another. One by one they took turns. Noah watched Ivy closely, ready to retreat if she showed stress, but she didn't. She shifted slightly, adjusted her coils, then rested. Claire stood behind them, arms crossed and smiling faintly. Later, when the students left, their teacher approached Noah. "That story. You have no idea what that meant to some of those kids. A few of them. They've been through stuff. They know what it's like to be thrown away." Noah swallowed hard. "Yeah," he said. "I do too." That evening, he sat with Claire on the veranda overlooking the reserve. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky with streaks of lavender and fire. "She did well today," Claire said. "Better than I ever imagined," Noah replied. "You too." He glanced sideways. "You think she's ready?" Claire nodded. "I do. If you want to leave her here, she'll be safe, respected, educated about. We'll give her a real job." Noah was quiet for a moment. "I want to stay too." She raised her eyebrows. "Ivy's not the only one who needs a second chance," he added. Claire smiled slowly. "I was hoping you'd say that." He returned to the guest cabin that night feeling lighter than he had in months. Ivy had a place. He had purpose. The dusty weight that had followed him from Guatemala through the rescue center and into the alley behind the strip mall had, for the first time, begun to lift. And as the desert air cooled and coyotes yipped in the distance, he opened his old field journal, turned to a blank page, and wrote, "Day 1. Not in the rainforest. Not in the lab. In the desert. With her. With people who care. This is where we begin again." It was nearing the end of Noah's first full week at the Sonora Discovery Center. The desert had begun its slow shift from dry heat to autumn cool, and the days felt shorter, not in hours, but in pace. Noah had fallen into rhythm quickly, spending mornings with the reptiles, afternoons assisting with education programs, and evenings writing in his old field journal by lamplight. Ivy had adapted just as well, if not better. She shed fully for the first time since her rescue, a clean, silvery casing that unfurled like a delicate scroll. To Noah, it was a sign. She was healing from the inside out. But not everything heals cleanly. Some wounds linger beneath the surface. It started with an email. Subject: Inquiry regarding boa constrictor. Noah was alone in the staff room, half-eaten granola bar in one hand, when he opened the message. The sender was anonymous, the body short. "I heard you picked up a red tail from the Phoenix area. I think she used to be mine. Can we talk?" Noah's fingers froze above the keyboard. For a moment, the noise of the building vanished. He stared at the screen, heart thudding. It wasn't impossible. Claire had posted a short piece about Ivy on the center's social media the day before, describing her rescue and new role as an educational ambassador. No identifying details, just a photo of her coiled peacefully on a rock under a heat lamp. The post had gone modestly viral in the herpetology community. Comments flooded in, most of them encouraging, some critical, a few curious. But this was different. He clicked reply and typed, "Who are you?" The response came within the hour. The sender identified himself as Mark Benton, a man in his late 20s who had lived in Phoenix and had, by his own admission, purchased a red-tailed boa at an exotic pet expo 2 years ago. He claimed the snake had grown too aggressive, had refused to eat, and had become more trouble than she was worth. Noah's jaw clenched. Mark said he gave her away, but didn't specify how. "I think I made a mistake," the final line read. "If she's okay, I just want to know." Noah forwarded the message to Claire. She called him 10 minutes later. "Well?" "I believe him," Noah said bitterly. "And I wish I didn't." Claire exhaled. "It puts us in a difficult spot." "Technically, if he had proof of ownership. He doesn't. And he abandoned her. We have no legal obligation to return anything." "I agree, but we should proceed carefully." The next day, Mark showed up. Uninvited. Noah was out near the greenhouse helping one of the interns prepare a feeding session when a staff member approached him. "There's a guy asking for you at the front gate. Says it's about Ivy." Noah walked briskly across the shaded courtyard to the main building. He spotted him immediately. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a backward baseball cap and a tank top that exposed sun-faded tattoos. His arms were folded tight, as if trying to make himself appear casual. "Mark?" Noah asked, stepping forward. "Yeah, you're Noah, right? What are you doing here?" Mark glanced around. "Just wanted to see her. Make sure she's okay. She's not an exhibit for you, and she's not your snake anymore." Mark raised his hands. "Look, man, I get it. I screwed up. I bought her on impulse. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 25, had no clue about heating or diet or any of that crap. When she stopped eating, I panicked. Thought she was gonna die, so I gave her to a guy who said he'd take her." "Who?" "I don't know. Craigslist. Some reptile group. Doesn't matter now." Noah's fists curled. "It matters. She ended up in a dumpster." Mark flinched. "That wasn't me." "No? Then you tell me exactly where she went and how she got from your living room to nearly dead in a black tub." Mark hesitated. "I can't. I'm just trying to make peace." Noah's voice lowered. "You left her to die." Silence stretched between them. Noah's heart pounded in his ears. Mark eventually looked away. "You're right. I messed up, but it's good to see someone saved her." Noah didn't reply. Mark added, "Can I just see her? One last time?" "No," Noah said flatly. Mark nodded slowly. "Fair." Then he turned and walked away. That evening, Noah sat beside Ivy's enclosure, watching her bask under the heat lamp. She seemed unaware of the storm that had passed around her. Or maybe she did. Her stillness had a weight to it tonight. Claire appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I'm not sure. He's gone. Probably for good." "I thought I'd feel better," Noah said. "But all I feel is angry." Claire sat on the floor beside him. "You can be angry. You're allowed. I keep thinking, what if he wants to claim her down the road? Legally? Then we'll fight. And we'll win. But what if I wasn't here? What if no one found her?" Claire was quiet for a moment. "Then this story would have ended differently." Noah closed his eyes. "I hate that. That it came down to chance." Claire looked at him. "It didn't. It came down to you." Days passed. Noah refocused. He buried himself in work, training staff on reptile handling, designing new educational panels, helping Ivy transition to brief public viewings. Ivy responded well to the changes, growing more active, feeding regularly, even allowing gentle touches from select students under supervision. She was becoming a symbol of survival. One afternoon, a boy from a nearby middle school asked, "Does she remember what happened to her?" Noah answered carefully, "I don't think she remembers it the way people do, but she's learned who she can trust." And in saying it, he realized the words were just as much about himself. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Mark, the Sonora Discovery Center hosted its largest event of the season, Wildlife Weekend. It was a celebration of desert life, science, and education. A blend of workshops, meet and greets with animal ambassadors, and lectures from visiting experts. Families came from across Arizona, spilling into the wide courtyard, where tents and tables had been set up under white canopies to provide shade from the still warm autumn sun. Noah had never been good with crowds, but he'd volunteered to run the Reptile Encounters table. Ivy, now housed in a glass-fronted habitat behind the demonstration area, would be introduced to the public in limited supervised sessions, her first true appearance since her rescue. She was ready. He wasn't sure he was. The morning was a flurry of activity. Volunteers adjusted signs, restocked pamphlets, wiped down exhibit surfaces, and conducted last-minute sound checks. A line of children formed even before the gates officially opened, most clutching frozen lemonade cups and wearing wide-brimmed hats. Claire stopped by Noah's table just after 10. "You good?" she asked, glancing at Ivy's enclosure. Noah nodded. "Yeah, I think so. She'll do fine. So will you." He looked over at the kids inching closer. "We've rehearsed the talking points?" Claire gave a dry smile. "Twice. Relax, Professor." He exhaled slowly and checked Ivy one last time. She was draped across a heated log, her body coiled with practiced grace. Her tongue flicked gently, reading the energy in the air. At 11:30, the first demo began. Noah stepped forward under the canopy, holding a headset mic. Hi everyone, my name's Noah, and today we're going to talk about snakes, why they matter, what makes them amazing, and how they're more than just creatures in scary movies. He introduced the concept of cold-blooded metabolism, explained shedding cycles, and showed a preserved shed to the kids, long, delicate, nearly transparent. This, he said, holding the brittle casing up to the light, is what transformation looks like. A snake sheds its skin as it grows, not because it wants to change, but because it has to. If it doesn't, the old skin tightens and constrains. Change isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary. He didn't expect the parents to nod too. Then gently, he brought out Ivy. She lay curled in a soft cloth carrier, calm but alert. Her coloration had returned, earthy reds and golds lining the thick black markings across her back. The light hit her just right, casting a faint shimmer across her scales. She looked regal, strong. The children gasped, and Noah smiled. "This is Ivy," he said. "She's a red-tailed boa. She's non-venomous, calm, and, like a lot of us, she's been through some things." He told them the story, not with dramatic flourish, but with sincerity. The dumpster, the recovery, the second chance. The kids listened. So did the adults. A boy raised his hand. "Why would someone throw her away?" Noah paused. "Because they didn't understand her. They were scared of what they couldn't control. But being scared doesn't mean something is bad. And abandoning something you don't understand, that's not the snake's fault." Another girl asked, "Is she scared of people now?" She was, but not anymore. After the session, a steady stream of visitors came forward to see Ivy up close. Some brave enough to touch her with 2 fingers, others simply staring in fascination. Noah and 2 trained volunteers supervised each interaction, ensuring Ivy remained safe and respected. She handled it all like a seasoned professional. "She's a natural," Claire said later that afternoon as they wrapped up the last group. "You sure she's not your emotional twin?" Noah chuckled. "We're both good at hiding when we're hurt." Claire looked at him seriously. "You've built something here, with her, and with us. Feels that way." That night, the team gathered for a small celebration. Pizza, iced tea, and a campfire just outside the center's main trailhead. The stars emerged slowly over the desert, twinkling above the silhouettes of cactus and mesquite trees. Noah found himself sitting beside Ivy's enclosure again after the others had gone in. She had settled comfortably, her body half coiled on the heated rock, head resting atop the curve of her side. "You were amazing today," he whispered. "You made people less afraid. That's a big deal." He rested his forehead briefly against the glass. She didn't flinch. "Maybe that's what I'm meant to do too." His phone buzzed. A message from an old colleague in Tucson. "Saw your snake video. That's real work you're doing, man. We're proud of you." Noah stared at the screen for a long time. Then he opened a blank email and began typing. Subject: Research Inquiry. Educational Potential of Rehabilitated Reptiles. He wasn't just a volunteer anymore. He was a field biologist with something new to study. The next morning, Ivy refused food. At first, Noah wasn't alarmed. Snakes skipped meals sometimes, especially after events or handling. But by the second day, her body posture had shifted. She became more reclusive, hiding deeper, moving less. On the 3rd day, she began showing signs of stress. Subtle scale dullness, slight wheezing, lethargy. Noah canceled his afternoon sessions and began full monitoring. He checked temperature gradients, humidity levels, water, bedding. Everything looked fine. He consulted with Claire, then with their exotic vet partner in Mesa via Zoom. "Could be early respiratory infection," the vet said. "Could also be just fatigue. Keep monitoring. If it worsens, bring her in for a full scan." That night, Noah didn't sleep. He stayed beside Ivy, notebook open, recording every small movement. His body ached from the cot. His throat was dry from silence. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when everything was starting to work. By the 5th day, Ivy hadn't moved. Noah checked her reflexes. There was sluggish response, but still life. He bundled her gently into a transport box, padded with soft towels and a warming wrap, and called the vet's emergency line. "I'm bringing her in." The drive to Mesa was 2 hours of desert highway and tension. Noah didn't play music, didn't drink coffee, didn't think, only drove, one hand occasionally resting on the box beside him. At the clinic, they took her in immediately. Noah waited in the corner of the tiled room, hands clasped between his knees. The vet returned after 20 minutes. "She's stable, breathing's shallow but improving. We'll keep her overnight. Fluids, mild antibiotics. She may just be fighting off delayed stress response." Noah's shoulders sagged. The vet smiled. "She's a tough one. So are you." That night, he returned to the center alone. The guest cabin felt hollow without the presence of Ivy's quiet breathing. He stood outside under the stars again, staring into the vast desert. Some part of him had believed that once she was safe, everything would be. But healing was never linear. Even in a perfect habitat, old wounds could echo. Still, she had survived before. She would again. So would he. Ivy remained at the Mesa Veterinary Clinic for nearly 48 hours following her emergency transport. Inside the sterile exam room, the soft hum of medical devices mixed with the quiet beeps of monitors. The room was modest, a place rarely visited by high-profile animals, but every detail mattered in ensuring the snake's recovery. Noah paced outside the isolation unit, his every heartbeat echoing with anxiety. He returned to the center later that night in a state of heavy exhaustion, yet his thoughts were haunted by the slumbering presence of Ivy. Back at the Sonora Discovery Center, Claire had doubled her efforts, checking every detail of the enclosures, ensuring that the other animals received the care they deserved, while also arranging a makeshift recovery support area for Ivy upon her return. The staff gathered in a small meeting later that evening in the main hall, their discussions a blend of hope and pragmatism. "We'll know more in the morning," Claire told the team, casting a determined glance at Noah, whose eyes were red from sleepless worry. "In the meantime, let's keep Ivy's recovery in our hearts. We owe her that much." Noah returned to his guest cabin, his mind swirling with memories. He recalled the harsh images of the dumpster where Ivy had been first found, the rusted tub, the discarded newspaper, the grim determination in the snake's eyes as if pleading for a second chance. Now those images mixed with the more hopeful ones of the rescue center, where children's laughter and gentle hands had helped her trust again. But tonight, the fear of losing her was palpable. At dawn the following day, the clinic staff gathered to discuss Ivy's progress. The veterinarian, Dr. Ramirez, a middle-aged man with soft eyes and a voice that wavered just enough to hint at deep compassion, delivered his report. "Ivy is slowly responding to treatment. Her breathing, while still shallow, has improved. The fluids and antibiotics seem to have given her a boost. There's no sign of severe infection at the moment, but she will need another day or two in our care for us to be sure that her system has stabilized." Noah exhaled deeply when he heard her name softly spoken in his presence during the debriefing. He had sat silently, eyes fixed on the floor, absorbing every word. In the quiet aftermath, he finally asked, "Do you think she'll pull through?" Dr. Ramirez offered a small, optimistic smile. "I've seen many cases like this turn around. She's fragile, and there may be setbacks, but based on her vitals now, there is every reason to be hopeful." Noah's relief was tempered by gratitude and a renewed sense of responsibility. He understood that Ivy's survival was not just a testament to modern veterinary medicine, but also to the human spirit's capacity to care, to fight against neglect and cruelty. That very night, after a restless sleep filled with worry and hope intermingled in his dreams, Noah received a call from Claire. "We're all waiting for you at the center. Ivy is coming home today," she said, her voice light yet measured. Noah felt his pulse quicken. This was the moment he had been anxiously anticipating. The drive back from Mesa was a blur of roadside signboards and quiet desert panoramas. Noah's mind drifted between reflections on Ivy's ordeal and the unwavering trust he had placed in her resilience. As he pulled into the parking lot of the Sonora Discovery Center, the staff greeted him with warm smiles and quiet words of encouragement. Outside, the cool evening air welcomed them like an old friend returning from a long journey. Claire helped unload the carrier that held Ivy. She explained the updated care plan in detail, a gentle transition from the clinic's intensive care to the center's nurturing environment. The recovery enclosure had been outfitted with the latest upgrades, a soft substrate to prevent abrasions, a carefully controlled heat source, and humidity levels adjusted to mimic a tropical microclimate. There were even a few familiar items, small rocks and logs that Ivy had grown accustomed to during her initial days of recovery at the center. Noah watched carefully as Ivy was placed into her new temporary home. For a few agonizing moments, she remained motionless, as if assessing the surroundings with cautious skepticism. Then ever so slowly she began to stir. Her tongue flicked the air tentatively, and a subtle shift in her coils suggested that she recognized the warmth and the safety that now embraced her. A hush fell over the room. Staff members who had gathered to witness the moment exchanged relieved glances. Noah felt as if he were holding his breath alongside them, waiting for a sign. When, at last, Ivy extended her slender form to explore the soft bedding, a gentle cheer broke out among the onlookers. It was not exuberant or loud, but a shared exhalation of relief, a moment of silent triumph over the dark beginning that had once threatened to define her life. Later that evening, after the immediate flurry of activity had subsided, and Ivy was left alone in her enclosure to rest, Noah retreated to a quiet corner near the center's small courtyard. The night sky was a deep indigo, sprinkled with stars, and the gentle hum of crickets provided a serene counterpoint to the otherwise bustling energy of the rescue center. With a well-worn notebook open on his lap, he began to write the next chapter of his own journey, a blend of scientific observation, raw emotion, and reflective gratitude. He wrote about the fragility of life and the beauty of giving someone a second chance, even if that someone had once been treated like refuse. He penned reflections on the strange yet powerful bonds that form between people and animals under extraordinary circumstances, and how the shared experiences of pain, recovery, and hope can transform not only lives but entire communities. His words spilled onto the page in a rush, revealing the depths of his connection to Ivy and the unexpected ways she had reignited his sense of purpose. Outside, the voice of a passing conversation caught his ear. A staff member recounting to a colleague how Ivy's recovery had already begun to inspire local school children to speak about compassion and responsibility for living creatures. Noah felt the sting of tears, not of sorrow, but of overwhelming appreciation for the interconnected lives of everyone involved. That night, as he finally drifted off to a fitful sleep in the guest cabin, his mind was filled with a fragile hope, a belief that despite the scars of the past, healing was possible if one had the courage to nurture life with a gentle, unwavering heart. His dreams mingled with the memory of a snake's subtle movement, a reminder that even the most wounded among us could find a way to rise again, if only given the chance. 3 weeks after her return from the clinic, Ivy had fully resumed her role as an educational ambassador at the Sonora Discovery Center. Her movements were stronger now, smoother. She basked under the heat lamp with quiet confidence, and she responded well to Noah's voice, his presence, his gentle handling. She had, in her way, become a symbol. For the visitors, especially the younger ones, her story wasn't just about biology. It was about compassion, responsibility, resilience. Teachers spoke of Ivy weeks after visits ended. Students wrote essays about her. One class from Tucson created a mural of her, coiled under painted stars, with the words, "Everyone deserves a second chance." Noah kept the mural's photo pinned above his desk. That Monday morning began like most others. Noah reviewed the day's schedule, 2 school groups, then a private tour with a small homeschooling collective from Flagstaff. Ivy would be included in both sessions, provided she remained calm. She always did. Claire met him near the outreach classroom with 2 new volunteers in tow. "They're interested in animal education," she said. "Can you walk them through Ivy's presentation routine?" "Sure," Noah said. "We'll go slow. Ivy sets the pace." The first group arrived, a busload of 4th graders, buzzing with anticipation and sugar. The classroom was already prepared. Whiteboard notes about snake anatomy, display models of skeletons and scales, and at the center, Ivy's glass-fronted habitat. Noah began the presentation with calm enthusiasm. "Who here has seen a snake before? In the wild? At home? In movies?" Hands shot up. A few shouted out names. "Rattlesnake. Python. Noodle." Noah chuckled. "Noodle, huh? I like that." He leaned on the edge of the table and lowered his voice. "Today, you'll meet a real one. She's quiet, gentle, and she's been through a lot. Her name is Ivy. And before I introduce her, I want to tell you a story." He launched into Ivy's background, not graphic but honest. He explained what happens when people take on responsibilities they don't understand, when living beings are treated like decorations or experiments. He explained how Ivy had survived what many wouldn't, how healing takes time. "She's not scary," he said at last. "She's strong, and she's here because someone believed she was worth saving." When he brought her out, there was a hush. Ivy moved slowly across his forearms, calm and watchful. Her red-brown scales caught the light, and for a long moment, the children simply watched her, silent with awe. Then came the questions, dozens of them. Curious, wide-eyed questions about her diet, her senses, her memory, her feelings. "Does she know you saved her?" one girl asked. Noah paused, then smiled gently. "I don't think she knows the word, but I think she understands trust. That's more important." After the presentation, one of the volunteers approached him. Her name was Kendra, a university student studying environmental education. She was quiet, but observant. "You didn't talk like a zookeeper," she said. "You talked like someone who needed saving too." Noah looked at her. "I think a lot of people feel that way sometimes, forgotten or thrown away." She nodded, slowly. "I used to be like Ivy." That surprised him, but he said nothing, just let her stand beside him, watching Ivy return to her enclosure, curling into her shelter with practiced grace. The second group that day, the homeschool collective, was small but eager. Older teens this time. Noah adjusted his tone to match, shifting from basics to more nuanced discussion. Invasive species, captive breeding ethics, environmental threats, and the psychological impacts of neglect in reptiles. One of the students, a tall, serious boy named Micah, asked, "Why not just release her into the wild once she recovered?" Noah replied, "Because Ivy was born in captivity. She wouldn't survive out there. She doesn't know how to hunt, how to avoid predators, or where to find shelter. She's adapted to human environments now. We can't undo that." Another student asked, "Do you think she remembers the person who abandoned her?" Noah thought for a moment. "I think she remembers stress, pain, but also safety, calm, familiarity. Snakes may not process memory like humans do, but they respond to patterns, and she responds to kindness now." Later that evening, while washing the water bowls in the animal prep area, Noah found himself reflecting on that question. He hadn't thought of Mark Benton in weeks, hadn't seen or heard from him since their uncomfortable meeting at the gates of the Discovery Center. Part of Noah hoped it would stay that way, but another part, a smaller, unsettled part, felt that there was still something unresolved. He hadn't forgiven him, and maybe he never would, but he no longer burned with the same anger. Something had shifted. Time, perhaps, or Ivy's quiet, continued resilience. That night, as he refilled her enclosure's water dish and cleaned out the substrate, she stirred in her sleep, lifting her head briefly, tongue flicking. Then she settled again. She was comfortable. She was home. The following week, Claire called a meeting to discuss future plans. The Discovery Center had received a grant to expand its education programs statewide. That meant more staff, more tours, and more travel. Ivy, as their most recognized animal ambassador, would be featured in a series of educational videos, filmed on site but distributed to schools across Arizona. "We want to make her story part of the curriculum," Claire said. "Lessons on ethics, biology, and recovery." Noah sat quietly for a moment, then said, "Can I help write the materials?" Claire smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." For the next few days, Noah poured himself into writing. He crafted lesson plans, video scripts, classroom discussion prompts. The narrative was factual, but layered with meaning. What does it mean to be responsible? How do we recognize the difference between fear and danger? How can healing be supported, both in animals and people? Each section began with Ivy's story. Not just the horror of her abandonment, but the grace of her second chance. By the end of the week, the first film crew arrived. Small, local, but professional. Ivy was calm under the soft lighting, resting on Noah's arm as he stood before the camera. He recited the opening lines he'd written. "This is Ivy. She was left behind. But this is not a story about pain. This is a story about recovery, trust, and what happens when one life decides another life is worth saving." That evening, Claire approached him in the main hallway, a small box in hand. "What's this?" Noah asked. "A gift," she said. Inside was a small engraved nameplate. It read, "Ivy, survivor, educator, symbol of second chances." Noah's throat tightened. They installed it above her enclosure the next morning. Visitors now paused to read it before meeting her eyes. And Ivy, calm, quiet Ivy, seemed to watch them back, patient and unafraid. Autumn in southern Arizona was supposed to be dry. Clear skies, cool breezes, a reprieve from the blistering heat of summer. But on the second Friday of November, the desert defied the forecast. Dark clouds rolled in unexpectedly, heavy and low. By mid-afternoon, the sky had turned to slate. Thunder cracked beyond the horizon. It was the kind of storm that rarely visited this part of the Sonoran Desert, and never so violently. Noah stood outside the Sonora Discovery Center, scanning the gathering gloom. A bitter wind blew across the courtyard, tossing leaves and fine dust into chaotic spirals. Inside, the staff scrambled to secure outdoor exhibits and bring sensitive animals to their storm-ready enclosures. The air smelled of rain and electricity. Claire approached him, her brow furrowed. "We're on flash flood watch. Emergency protocols are in place, and we're keeping the center closed until the system passes." "How long do they think it'll last?" Noah asked, pulling Ivy's enclosure checklist from his clipboard. "Could be hours. Could be all night." That answer didn't sit well with him. He nodded, then moved briskly toward the reptile room, where Ivy's habitat sat secure but exposed to potential power outages. She was curled beneath her favorite half-log, seemingly indifferent to the atmospheric pressure that had everyone else on edge. Still, Noah could feel it. Something about the storm unsettled him, like the rising sense of a test waiting to unfold. The power went out at 6:42 p.m. An alarm beeped briefly, then silence swallowed the center. Noah and two other staff members, Kendra and Luis, immediately activated the generator system. Emergency lights flickered to life in key areas, including the reptile wing. But only essential functions were covered. That meant no heat lamps, no temperature regulators. And for cold-blooded creatures like Ivy, that was a dangerous problem. Noah ran to the enclosure and checked the backup thermometer. The temperature had already dropped by 4 degrees. Ivy remained motionless, but he could feel her unease in the way she curled tighter, seeking warmth that was no longer there. Claire appeared beside him moments later with a lantern in one hand and a walkie-talkie in the other. "Substation's down. Utility crews are on the way, but the roads are flooding already. They're warning it could be 8 hours minimum." Noah's heart sank. "We need to get heat in here." "We can't run the full HVAC on generator," Claire replied. "It'll blow the backup circuit." "Then I'll stay with her." "Noah, she's been through worse, but I'm not leaving her cold again, not even for a minute." Claire met his eyes. After a pause, she nodded. "Do what you need to do." He improvised quickly. He grabbed thermal blankets from the supply closet, wrapped heat packs in cloth, and placed them inside the enclosure in safe corners. Then he unzipped his sleeping bag from the guest cabin and laid it near the base of the habitat to block the draft from the vent. With a flashlight propped against the shelf, he sat on the floor beside Ivy, whispering softly as he placed a hand against the side of the glass. "She doesn't know it's a storm," he said aloud, to no one. "But she knows what it's like when the world turns cold." Outside, thunder shook the building. The wind howled like a warning. Inside, Ivy remained still, but her tongue flicked weakly, touching the edge of one heat pack. Noah stayed up all night, replacing heat packs as they cooled, adjusting insulation, scribbling temperatures in his notebook every 20 minutes. He ignored the cramping in his legs and the stiffness in his back. All that mattered was the steady rise and fall of Ivy's sides, the slow proof that she was still there, still fighting, even if she didn't understand what for. The power returned at 4:13 a.m. A sudden hum vibrated through the vents as systems came online. The red glow of heat lamps blinked back to life, casting warmth across the enclosure. Noah exhaled, long and slow. His hands trembled as he peeled off the last heat pack and sat back against the wall, exhausted beyond words. Claire arrived minutes later, her hair damp and her jacket soaked from inspecting outdoor structures. "You stayed?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Noah simply nodded. "How is she?" He turned to the enclosure. Ivy had uncoiled slightly. Her tongue flicked, steady now, her body shifting toward the warmth like a flower turning toward the sun. "She made it," he whispered. Claire crouched beside him. "So did you." They sat there for a while in silence, watching the first rays of morning creep through the clouds. Later that day, once the center reopened and visitors returned, Noah slipped away for an hour to shower and rest. When he returned, he found a surprise waiting for him. The students from the homeschool group 2 weeks earlier had sent a package, a wooden frame holding a hand-painted portrait of Ivy. At the bottom were the words, "Recovery isn't linear. It coils, like her." Noah stood in the hallway staring at it. Something shifted in his chest. Not pain, not pride. Peace. That evening, as he fed Ivy and cleaned her water dish, he spoke quietly. "I think we're ready." She flicked her tongue once, curling lazily onto her rock. "I don't know what comes next," he continued, "but I want more than survival. For you, for me. I want something lasting." He glanced across the room to his desk, where a pamphlet for the National Herpetological Educators Conference lay half open. He'd been invited to speak, to share Ivy's story and the work they were doing at the center. A few months ago, he would have laughed at the idea. Now, he opened his notebook and began to write. The National Herpetological Educators Conference took place in Austin, Texas, a 4-day gathering of biologists, conservationists, and educators from across the country. It was the kind of event Noah used to attend before everything in his life had unraveled. Keynote speakers in button-down shirts, research posters tacked to corkboard panels, late-night discussions over burritos and beer about invasive species, habitat loss, and the ethics of exotic pet trade. But this time, he wasn't just an attendee. He was the story. Claire had submitted his name months ago, when Ivy was still sleeping 20 hours a day and clinging to warmth like a secret. Noah hadn't thought much would come of it. But now, standing backstage in a modest auditorium before a seated crowd of nearly 200 educators, he gripped the clicker in his hand and exhaled. The projector screen behind him read, "From Trash to Teacher, the story of Ivy the boa constrictor and the power of animal redemption." When the host introduced him, applause rippled through the hall. Noah stepped up to the podium slowly, deliberately. He wore a soft olive-green shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, the faint outline of Ivy's painted mural printed on a patch above his heart. "Hi," he began. "I'm Noah Reynolds. I'm a biologist, a field worker, a teacher. But for the last year, I've mostly just been a friend to a snake who refused to give up." He clicked to the first slide, a grainy photo of the black plastic tub in the dumpster behind the Phoenix strip mall. Gasps echoed through the room. "This is how I met Ivy," he said. "And this is what people throw away when they don't understand what they've taken on." He spoke for 40 minutes, told them everything, from the first moment he touched Ivy's cold, fragile body, to the sleepless nights in the center, to the moment she wrapped around his arm and trusted him enough to face a crowd of wide-eyed children. He showed her healing, her growth, her impact. He ended with a video, one Claire had edited, a montage of Ivy at the Sonora Discovery Center, students laughing, fingers gently touching her scales, Ivy resting beneath her lamp, the engraved plaque that read, "Symbol of second chances." When the lights came back on, there was silence, then applause, real, sustained applause. And in that sound, Noah felt something he hadn't in years: belonging. Back in Arizona, life moved forward quietly. Ivy returned to her daily rhythm, eating, basking, resting, educating. Noah returned to writing curriculum modules for local schools. Claire secured another grant, expanding the outreach program. Kendra was promoted to assistant educator. Luis began training to care for larger reptiles. The center grew not in size, but in soul. One afternoon in late January, Noah received a letter in the mail. Not email, real paper, postmarked from a nearby town. He opened it cautiously. The handwriting was uneven, the letter short. "Noah, I don't expect forgiveness. I know I lost the right to ask for anything. But I saw Ivy's video. I cried. I never thought she'd survive, let alone become something bigger. Thank you for showing me what she could have had from the start. I'm not getting another snake. I'm volunteering at a shelter now, trying to fix what I broke. She deserved better. So did you." Mark Noah sat down on the porch steps and stared at the paper. He didn't cry. He didn't crumple it. He just held it for a long time. Forgiveness was never simple, but it could start quietly. In early spring, the Sonora Discovery Center launched a pilot program called Cold Blood, Warm Heart, a series of workshops where students not only learned about reptiles, but also discussed empathy, care, and ethical treatment of living things. Ivy was the centerpiece of every session. One day, after a class of high schoolers had left, a girl lingered behind. She was shy, with ink-stained fingers and sleeves pulled over her hands. "Can I stay a little longer?" she asked Noah. "Of course," he said. She sat near Ivy's enclosure, watched her move slowly across the rock. After a few minutes, she whispered, "I used to hurt things. When I was little, I didn't understand what it meant. I just wanted control." Noah said nothing. He sat beside her. "Ivy didn't deserve what happened to her," the girl continued. "But you didn't give up on her." "No," Noah said softly. "And I won't." The girl nodded. "I think I want to be better too." Noah looked at her, not with judgment, but with quiet understanding. "You already are," he said. Months later, a news outlet did a feature story on the center. Ivy's image went regional, then national. The segment aired under the title, "The Snake Who Saved a Scientist and a Community." When asked about the moment everything changed, Noah didn't hesitate. "It wasn't when I pulled her out of the trash. It wasn't even when she let me hold her. It was when I realized that saving her wasn't just about her survival. It was about mine, too." On the anniversary of Ivy's rescue, the center held a small ceremony. Staff, students, and supporters gathered in the courtyard, lit by strings of desert lanterns. Ivy's enclosure had been expanded, its centerpiece now a custom-designed habitat that mimicked a South American understory. Warm, lush, full of life. Noah stood before the gathered group, Ivy coiled loosely around his arm. "Exactly 1 year ago," he began, "she was considered trash. Now she's touched thousands of lives. And the truth is, the more we learn to care for the most misunderstood among us, the more we become who we're meant to be." He paused. "And I think Ivy's finally where she belongs." Later that night, when the guests had gone and the stars stretched overhead, Noah sat beside her enclosure, his journal open on his lap. He wrote, "She is calm tonight, steady. Her eyes follow me. I don't think she remembers everything, but I do. And I will. Because remembering isn't just about pain. It's about honoring what we survived." He closed the notebook, stood, and for the first time in a long while, he felt whole.